So we are coming towards the end of our journey to awakening, and of course, this is our 4th of July opportunity as well so we're going to start with this. Sorry. Sorry, Ryan.
The soul is forever calling us to higher levels and states of consciousness. This is the essence of spiritual awakening. We discover that all along we have the freedom to be, the freedom to choose, and the freedom to love, or not. Sliding up and down the levels or in and out of the states of consciousness reminds us that this is an inner journey that we are always on. As we answer the call of the soul, we do, in fact, awaken. This awakening brings a realization that our journey isn't just about us. To bring meaning and purpose to our lives, we realize that our light and presence is also for the awakening of humanity, to the need for the freedom to be, to choose, and to love, for each and every person on earth. Taking responsibility and living from a higher vibration means that we can and must contribute to the raising of consciousness on the issues facing our nation and our world today. This includes abortion, the LGBTQ community, race, women, war, poverty, greed, and climate change. If we get pulled into anger, hatred, or despair, we aren't living from our highest vibrations, only joining our energy to the ongoing either-or polarizations. Thich Nhat Hanh writes, "We need enlightenment, not just individually, but collectively, to save the planet. We need to practice mindfulness if we want to have a future, if we want to save ourselves and the planet." This week we examine Richard Barrett's expansion of Maslow's hierarchy of needs with the 7 levels of personal consciousness, and we explore what impact our soul is calling for us to contribute.
Yay, thank you, Ryan and Jamie. Thank you so much. What a topic for the 4th of July, right? Yeah, the freedom to be, to choose, and to love. And of course, our spirituality speaks about that in how important it is for us to experience that in our own lives. But as you know, as we raise our vibration, we discover that just being about us, ourselves, is not enough. So I'm of the era when in elementary school and junior high, I remember being taught to hide under my desk in case there was a nuclear war. We didn't have fire drills. We had nuclear war drills. I remember laying in my bed and listening to planes come overhead. This was outside of Philadelphia, and the Philadelphia airport, listening to planes coming overhead and wondering if these were the ones that were going to drop the bomb. That was in the early 70s. And I remember in 1986, many of you may remember this, those of us who were around at that time already starting to do our spiritual journey. In 1986, John Randolph Price started something, which was the World Meditation, Peace Meditation. And it was at the god-awful time of noon Greenwich Mean Time, which was 4 a.m. in the morning in Seattle, where I was living at the time. And our community there, our CSL there, we decided to participate in the program and in the raising of consciousness. The idea was that at the same time, all over the planet, people would sit in meditation for peace. So we rented the stadium, the Kingdome, and we had raised tens of thousands of dollars. Our community contributed tens of thousands of dollars in the raising of events, and we had almost 10,000 people there that night. And for an hour, we sat in the football stadium and we prayed for peace. We meditated on the raising of the vibrational rate of humanity. At the same time, unbeknownst to me, my mother became involved in a Christian program called Friendship Force. For those of you who don't know, my mother was raised in Germany through the war. She was there during the Second World War as a teenager. Her home was occupied by SSS officers because they believed, and rightfully so, that the family was resistors. And she was there when the Berlin Wall was put up. And so in 1986, 87, 88, she became part of this friendship force. And women, ordinary women, would go to Russia. And they would live for 2 weeks in an ordinary home with ordinary people and try to build a bridge of common ground, and just eating and drinking together and shopping together and doing what ordinary people do. And those women from those families would come to the United States and live in someone's home for a few weeks. In 1989, I was living in my cabin in the woods. I was out there during that time. No, that's not true. I wasn't out there yet. In 1989, I must have been somewhere with my mother. And we heard that weekend that the Berlin Wall was coming down. My mother said, "Never in my lifetime. I did not think that would ever happen in my lifetime." Because, families were separated by that wall. German families and many other families. "Never in my lifetime," she said. The power of consciousness. I believe that we all had a piece of making that wall come down when there was so much fear around the Cold War and all that was happening at the time. And as Kirby so beautifully said and so beautifully sung, we have come so far. Things do happen. Forward motion takes place. And we have to celebrate that. And we have to see that there is more to do. Simultaneously holding the paradox. And we have to celebrate our own commitment and our own lives that we've experienced and continue to grow into our freedom to be ourselves, to choose the lives that we want, to love in the way that we are called to love, to be expressing the calling of our soul. And yet, doesn't it sometimes feel like 2 steps forward and 1 step back? And our question for us, right, is how do we hold that paradox? How do we stand this time, this place, this moment on July 4th when we celebrate freedom and we celebrate independence and we celebrate our God-given right to self-actualization and to have the life that we choose? But it's not everyone, is it? I saw a movie the other day. Oh man, broke my heart. Oh, it was a little short, 12-minute animated short. And the end of it was 12 million child brides every year are still taking place on the planet. 12 million child brides every year. So it's important for us to stop. I'm going to get my notes here. It's important for us to stop, right, and to ask ourselves, as we are in this journey to awakening, and we are raising our vibrational rate, and we are doing this great work in the world for ourselves, are we choosing to be and to love and choosing to bring that forward with the things that are facing us? Just had affirmative action struck down in the universities, right? A year ago, just the other day, a year anniversary of the striking down of Roe versus Wade. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And part of it, I think, is, as spiritual people, I notice for myself, I so value the freedom and the independence that comes with that freedom that I forget that some of the mythology of our culture in the United States, out of which New Thought in the Science of Mind was born, actually has some flaws in the story, some misrepresentations. For those of you who are in the Science of Mind class this morning, you saw some of the misinterpretations, misrepresentations of the old Christians' creation and Hebrew creation stories. Well, we have them too, right here in the U.S. So we can think about a couple of things, right, that might help us maybe invite ourselves into a different understanding of this. The first is the myth that the United States was birthed out of religious freedom. This is not true. It was birthed out of people fleeing religious persecution. Absolutely. The Huguenots and the Puritans fled to the United States to get out of religious persecution. The problem is, when they got here and they started their own little colonies, they didn't want anybody else to come in. You couldn't buy property in the United States as a Catholic in the 14 and 1500s. It was the Quakers in Pennsylvania that started to make a difference in real religious freedom. Our independence and our freedom, which we find in the Declaration of Independence, which comes right out of the deep expectations of the Enlightenment, of rational thinking, and a recognition that superstition and fear are not the best ways to run the world, gave us the inalienable rights for all men. Oh, wait, no, all white men. Oh, wait, all white landowner men. But still, an aspiration, right? These were aspirations. Our myth of religious freedom was an aspiration that also dug itself deeply into the psyche of the American soul. This aspiration of the inalienable rights of all has been working at the heart of the soul of America since then, and has been taken up all around the world, starting with the French Revolution and all the revolutions in Europe, spreading into the revolutions in South America and Africa, from throwing off the weight of colonialism. The inalienable rights, freedom, freedom to be, freedom to choose, freedom to love, real freedom. And this has led in our country to all of the civil rights movements. Every social justice movement, starting with women's rights to vote, through the civil rights, the gay rights, now transgender, all of the disability acts, all of it stems from this that has been embedded in our psyche, this freedom, the freedom and independence to be who we are and to flourish. The other myth that we have in the United States is that we do it alone. But you know, the West was won only because all of the settlers who were white got land grants by the government. It's the only reason that settling happened. And so this freedom comes with a cost, and it comes with a responsibility. And it comes with our ability to hear the call, not only of our own soul, but the call of humanity. Fabulous woman from the early 1900s. She is considered one of the most recent Catholic mystics in France, a woman named Simone Weil. You know, there's always this conversation about rights and justice and how do you know, and well, what about my right? If you get your right, what about my right? And how do we know? And especially as spiritual people, we're not really supposed to be too involved in politics. And she writes this. Injustice is the cry of a soul being hurt. That's how you know. Not just, oh, I don't have enough money, or I feel like I'm, not worthy, or it's not a psychological thing. It's not an ego thing. It's a soul call to be free. To be, to love, to choose. And when that is hurt, that is injustice. That makes sense to me. When we think about our journey to awakening, we think about the ways that our soul has been hurt by our trauma or our childhood or experiences that we've had. And the soul of humanity is calling in the same way. We are part of that larger soul that is calling for deeper freedom to be, to choose, and to love. Freedom of will means the ability to do, say, and think as one wishes, to express life as one personally desires, to be able merely to think and dream of freedom would not be liberty. Ernest Holmes. Right, as we all know. It's not enough to talk about it. It's not enough to hope and wish for it. It is an act of application and living that makes the freedom real. And it's hard work, right? We all can attest to that in our own spiritual growth, our own personal growth. It is hard work to free ourselves from past patterns, old ideas, to get out of the knee-jerk reactions, to not recreate over and over and over again our own home life, right? It's hard work. And yet our soul demands it of us and wants nothing less than for us to shine our greatness, to shine our light, to shine the very gift and contribution that we have. And so we are urged on outside of our comfort zones, outside of, well, the ways in which we would limit ourselves and keep us small. And I believe that the soul of humanity is also calling. Freedom is, Ernest Holmes describes as the necessary prerogative of self-choice, acting as a law of cause and effect, carrying with it the liabilities of its selectivity. Okay, let me tell you, I've read Ernest Holmes for many, many years, and many years. I have never seen this quote before. I don't know where it's been hiding. Carrying with it the liabilities of its selectivity. Choice is selection, right? And we are free to choose, and we are free to select. But there are liabilities to those selections if we are not paying attention. And we see it. It's called climate change. Ernest Holmes goes on to say this: it is, however, an outstanding truth that every privilege brings its corresponding responsibility. You are free to choose, but you have to take the consequences of that choosing. As I said a few Sundays ago, I quoted Georgianne Moss, our core council chair and chair of our sustainability circle. We are not going to recycle our way out of climate change. But that's a beginning. To choose how we look at each other, how we speak about each other, to choose who we hire, to choose where how we make a living, to choose where we spend our money, to choose what kind of car we drive, to choose what kind of electricity we get, to choose who we vote for, to choose whether or not we vote. We are free to choose. And then we must take responsibility for that choosing, for the selectivity of our focus. And if you will recall in the conversation last week with Karen and that ladder and that beautiful levels of consciousness, we saw that as you got higher and higher and higher vibrations, higher and higher and higher levels of consciousness, as we move into oneness, we recognize that oneness does in fact include. It includes all of creation. It might include with family members that we haven't really cared for before, but it starts to grow that circle. People we don't understand, including animals and plants, our planet, including the impact of our choices, the impact of our freedom. I'm going to find this one here. Okay. We must, however, avoid, What we must avoid, however, is the confusion which arises from a belief in final revelations, from the belief that all truth is at last discovered, or that some one person or some one system of thought has delivered the last word. There are no finalities in any science, any philosophy, or any religion. Through the continual emergence of the creative principle, any last finality proves to be but the beginning of a new creative series. This eternal spiral, finding its base in the everlasting reality, will never cease to emerge. Wait a minute, did we get that? Both of those? There. That's the second part of that. It will never cease to emerge. We have come so far because it has continually been emerging. And it doesn't matter that it looks like 2 steps forward and 1 step back. It will never cease to emerge. because it is the very truth of life itself to be free to express itself, to recognize these choices and to move over and over again to a higher vibration. Let us not despair. Let us not fall into hate, anger, God forbid, apathy. We have come so far. And yes, there's always more to grow, always more to do. Even in our own lives, that's true. And let us see how much freedom has been birthed and how much that has become the way in which we see ourselves and each other. And let us not be fooled. By the way, only the extremes are shown to us in the media. Let us not be fooled. That is not the whole truth. And it is certainly not the spiritual truth. As we have been raising our vibrational rate, and we see it all over in our culture and in cultures everywhere, there comes a point of self-actualization that pops us into that next level, that next awareness. It is time then to be about transformation, to be in service, to recognize this oneness that we are part of. And it's not just a spiritual oneness. Well, because everything is spiritual, of course it's just a spiritual oneness. It's not separating life, the planet, humanity, other people, all of the things that are going on. It's not separating that from the oneness, but recognizing that it is in that place that this freedom to choose is playing out. And we are learning over and over and over and over again what it looks like when we choose from a higher vibration and when we don't. Humanity is being educated by the very choices we've been making. And the soul of humanity is calling us. It's calling us not only to the higher vibration so that we can be more at peace, so that we can feel more at ease, so that we can experience our own abundance, but so that we can be a light in the world, that we can walk from that higher vibration and bring it wherever we go. And that when we find ourselves confronted with things that we know are injustice, where the soul of humanity and individual souls are being hurt, let us move and act and choose from those higher vibrations, from that internal cohesion, being guided in how to make a difference and to be of service. This is why here at CSLDallas, we had our leadership lab on racism, facing racism here at CSLDallas. We'll be doing it again next year, and the whole community will be invited. This is why we have a sustainability circle. This is why we're doing the democracy and advocacy training. Because we want to bring that higher vibration out into the world. We want to be that place where the light shines. And we want to narrate and tell a new story. Humanity is growing into its greatness. We are becoming who we have come here to be. Let us tell that story and over and over and over and over again point to the ways that despite the myths of the starting of our particular culture, even those myths were seeds that were planted that have been growing into something amazing. Let us celebrate that this 4th of July. The soul is calling for a greater awakening in us and a greater awakening in humanity as a whole. Let us celebrate all the ways that that call has been answered and is continuing to be answered, regardless of the situation or circumstance of the moment. Is that not what we teach? Is that not what we teach when we have a diagnosis from a doctor? Or we look at our bank account and it looks not like what we were expecting? Or something happens in a relationship and we think, oh, it's going to end. This is the end of it all. What we know is to bring our spiritual truth to bear despite the circumstances. To recognize that the circumstances and it is an outpicturing of a certain set of choices, and we will bring new choices to the table. We'll bring a different vibration, a higher energy, a higher vision of who humanity is, just as we have grown the vision of who we ourselves are. On the very first page of The Science of Mind, Ernest Holmes writes what I will say is my most favorite quote. This is the promise. This is what we're up to. And this is our contribution. The divine plan is one of freedom. Bondage is not God ordained. Freedom is the birthright of every living soul. Thus, the inherent nature of humanity is forever seeking to express itself in terms of freedom. Let us celebrate how far we've come, celebrate all the wins along the way, and recognize that we are answering the call, not only of our own soul, but the soul of humanity. And so it is. So before we do that, I'm going to invite our music team on up here. This is going to be this is just our closing prayer about this.
Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us. Above us only sky. Imagine all the people living life for today. Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say I'm a dreamer. Oh yeah, you might. But I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and this world will be as one. Imagine no possessions. I really wonder if we can. No need for greed or hunger. just one big old family of woman and man. And imagine all the people sharing this beautiful world. Oh, hey, you may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not. I swear I know I'm not the only one. Oh, no, no. And maybe someday you will join us, and this world will be as one.